Now, I'm delighted to say Cork footballer Ciaran Sheehan is with us. Ciaran, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good morning, lads. How's things?
Good, thanks. Look, thanks for doing this. And you're involved with a project from Cork Football to try and raise funds for Pieta House this weekend, I think it is. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah. So it's we've decided to come together there as a group. I suppose the whole panel, including all the coaching staff and everything as well. And look, we decided to do a run in aid of Pieta House. And I suppose the concept behind it is really that we're getting all of our 34 clubs, I suppose, that are involved in the group together. And we're going basically running from club to club throughout Cork. As you know, it's quite a big county, so there's a few Ks to cover. So we've I think it's around 430 Ks in total. So it's just breaking up the group. I think it's around 10 Ks per player. It's working out as so. I suppose the idea behind it, look, we've seen a lot of support for Pieta from the GAA community in particular, and we see it as, I suppose, an opportunity to kind of keep that support going, keep the ball rolling there. So, look, we've come together and hopefully we can raise as much funds as possible this Saturday for that run.
Certainly at the start of lockdown, it seemed like people were very willing to have a conversation about their own difficulties with mental health, because literally the whole country was going through an existential crisis about whether or not society was going to end and whether or not, we were all panic buying and what was the right thing to do, what was the future going to look like. And people certainly seem more open about having a conversation, going, not having the best of days today myself. I wonder if that's going to be something that we all take with us and actually talking about any of the organisations out there that are offering help, be it the Samaritans or Pieta House or whoever it is, that actually it is important that we have these conversations about the services that are there, but why those services are there and why they're also going to be very necessary into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Pieta have really highlighted that, in these difficult times that, it is something that can be impacted. And I suppose usually, in life, I suppose it's very easy to get caught up in a bit of your own bubble and forget about, the looking after your own mental health. But I think that the other side of it is looking after kind of the mental health of others. And what I mean by that is, I suppose, just having awareness around, someone, a friend, a family member, someone that may be going through something that you don't really know, or you don't really understand what's going on with them. So it's more of a question of just asking I suppose more of a point of just asking the question to them and just wondering if they're okay. And I think that's I suppose really, really important. And as I said there, Pieta have highlighted that it is difficult times, and I suppose this is our way of showing our support from that point of view. But again, yeah, look, it's a big change for everybody, and I suppose with change comes a lot of different things, be it training, be it work, anything. I suppose life in general. I suppose this is hit everyone. So it's just a case of being able to manage that, take a step back, and being able to look after your own mental health.
One of the things I was very interested in around this kind of whole period was how professional sports people really have to stop being as selfish as they had to be to become professional sports people in the first place. And as somebody who has lived in that professional bubble, I'm really interested in your perspective about what that was like, and kind of almost retrospectively how you view how selfish you do have to be to make it to the top of your profession. Yeah,
that was something I actually struggled with, to be honest with you. It was one of those things where you're moving from an amateur game obviously into a professional, and I suppose the big emphasis and what the GAA is really built on is that I suppose camaraderie, that community, that doing things together, we belong to something. And there was a big change for me when I went out there in adapting to this whole professional side of things, because obviously, you're together as a team and you're all, trying to achieve the one thing, but at the same time, you're really looking after yourself in many ways. Look, you've contracts, your career is there, obviously money comes into the picture a bit. And I struggled with that for the first couple of years, in that there's things that you do a little bit differently in terms of when I suppose just being that bit more selfish, and just trying to kind of highlight your skills or highlight what you can do, as opposed to doing the team thing, which is something that was really kind of something I struggled with. But again, it's a cutthroat business. I think with any professional sport, there is an element of, as you said, selfishness, and I think it's important. Like, you're looking for longevity in your career as well, and it's just having that ability to just put the head down and look after yourself to a certain degree, but at the same time, you have to get that balance of doing the team thing. So there was a whole different kind of side to things that you have to deal with, and I think it's important that for any players going out there, Irish players in particular, moving from an amateur to professional sport, that they're aware of that, you know.
I guess like that's even kind of at the work side of it, and maybe actually at an elite level GAA as well. There has to be a selfishness about your schedule when I guess I'm talking about the home life and the work-life balance that has become really, really important to people in the midst of this and the aftermath of this. A lot of people working from home for the first time, realising that actually, you know, not having to spend the day commuting means I get to spend more time with my kids. And, you know, there's obviously difficulties when people are homeschooling, so that's not a one-way street of happiness. But you do have to be utterly selfish at a family level sometimes when you're trying to pursue an elite sports career. And look, I hadn't really thought about this before, but maybe that's as pronounced in GAA as it is, and maybe a bit more pronounced because, you know, at least professional sports people have downtime in the evenings. GAA players are like, okay, drop the work uniform, whatever that is, and get the gear bag and off you go again.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. It was that's another kind of bit of a struggle in many ways, but I suppose I was just probably starting to get back used to the swing of things when this all happened. But coming back from having that lifestyle of, you know, having your 9 to 5 and then having your evenings off was something I was used to. And then when you came back here, it was really, you know, 9 to 10 p.m. at night. That was something I was really kind of trying to wrap my head around. And as you said there, with family, look, you know, I lived out in Melbourne with my wife for 6 years, and we had that time. And all of a sudden, we lived down in East Cork, and she'd be down the house on her own for probably 5 of the 7 nights of the evening until 9 o'clock, and I'd see her just before bed, and that'd be it, you know. So it certainly takes a bit of getting used to. There is a lot of demand on intercounty players, and I think everybody's aware of it. It's just being able to manage that. And again, it comes back to that mental health and looking after your welfare, that, you know, it doesn't come to a point where high performance is being stretched so much, the standards are being stretched so much, that because it is going to keep going up and up, there comes a point where, you know, how do we manage the guys, you know, personal development, not just as a player. And I think the GPA are doing some great work around that, you know, in terms of trying to create awareness around that player development side of things. But inevitably it comes to that boiling point where you have to make a decision around, you know, do we just lump more money into the personal development and player welfare side of things, or, you know, do we have to actually start seriously thinking about maybe the professional side of things, you know? So it's an argument that's probably been ongoing for a long period of time, but I think it's something we do need to be aware of and conscious of moving forward.
Well, is that something we should be considering then, Ciaran? Because it does seem that it is hard to arrest the runaway train, if you take it like that, for intercounty football and hurling at the moment. There's no evidence other than the obvious pandemic at the moment to suggest that that's going to slow down if things get back to normal. So do you see it reaching the inevitable conclusion of professionalism or semi-professionalism at some point?
To be honest with you, I think the first step would be that large investment in the services that are provided through the GAA and the GPA in terms of that player development, player welfare. Inevitably, if standards keep getting pushed, I really don't know how sustainable it is, because guys that have families, might have a couple of kids that are on an intercounty panel, are working 9 to 5. They see their kids probably for a half an hour in the morning before they go to work for 5 nights of the week. I just don't see how that's sustainable. If you're an intercounty player and you're lucky enough to play for, you know, nearly 12 years in an intercounty panel, it's something that, you know, as
Skype line's not great here. We'll come back to that. Yeah, can you hear us now, Ciaran?
Yeah, I've got you there.
Yeah, sorry, you just froze for a second there.
Yeah,
you were just saying you're not sure how sustainable it is, obviously, with the commitments that people have, and ultimately something's going to break. And it feels like something kind of did break over the last couple of years in many different ways. I want to ask though, is this our chance actually to hit a reset button and go, okay, if you are in an intercounty panel and you're training 4 or 5 times a week, let's make it that you're only allowed to have one collective training session a week, and all the rest of the training has to be done at home, and you can do it any time. Like, I'm being completely ridiculous there with the one training session a week, but like, something has to stop, right? We can't continue to be demanding of amateur players in their pastime that they commit to this level. Otherwise, there's no chance of competing.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, like, and again, you run the risk of, guys that, want to experience other things in life. Like I suppose, looking from my own angle, I finished up in 2017. So I had 2 years of living in Melbourne without playing or being, hugely involved in a very competitive environment. And, I got a great outlook in life, I suppose, for that 2 years, because I essentially stepped out of the bubble. And it was a case of, you finish work on a Friday and you can relax and enjoy your few Friday beers, as opposed to, constantly thinking about performance and constantly thinking about the next session. And I suppose I think it's important that people have that outlook, growing up. Guys that come through the system at intercounty level, it's important that they get that balance right, because if you're heavy on the one side of just GA, like your performance on field, you can get a lot more out of your performance on field if you get that balance between your personal experience and your study or your work or whatever it is and your sport. Your performance is going to improve, and there's been studies that prove that. So I think it's really important to we're aware of that. I think that's the first step, is actually acknowledging it. And like, for example, in the AFL, where they have a player development manager at every club, so they have that resource available to all groups of players. We obviously don't have that here in Ireland, but again, it comes back to it's probably a bit of a money issue and the resourcing side of it, and how do we manage all that? But I think the next step is probably, from that side of things, the player services point of view.
It's interesting, Ciaran, because that's one of the things that actually was noticeable from watching the Michael Jordan documentary over the last few weeks, is that, I know, granted, it's 25 years ago, but Jordan's going out playing golf, they're having a few beers in between games and stuff. Was there almost a more relaxed atmosphere towards that sort of thing in the professional environment in Australia?
Yeah, I think there was. I suppose, again, it comes back to this is your career, and this is your contract. So it was a case of, particularly like for example, after games, obviously that in AFL you play week in, week out, and after a game, like, you might have an 8-day break, and it was always just a given that fellas would go out and might have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 probably max bottles of beer, and then you just go home because you're worried, like, you want to recover and be right for next week. So and then I suppose in my time out there, I was always comparing, the GAA side of things versus the AFL side of things, and obviously with the drink bans, and I think things have started to change a little bit around the GAA, around that kind of, vocabulary around drink bans and things like that. But I think it was just the case of the lifestyle out there the culture was probably just, like, you were almost given that personal responsibility or personal ownership to look after, yourself and your career, and be ready to train, because if you're not ready to train, you just won't be picked. So I suppose it's a bit different because you're playing week in, week out, and the balance was pretty good. Don't get me wrong, in the off season, I'd imagine fellas really let the hair down and relax and enjoy themselves and whatnot. But I suppose with the GACs, it's really, really important that you get that balance right, where management and everyone's roped in behind you around, trusting you to go out and enjoy yourself, but at the same time be ready to perform.
I think that's the big issue, isn't it? Some counties are really lucky in that they have a very progressive management system that understands exactly what their role is in helping facilitate the growth of the players as players, but also as human beings, because, that old adage, better people make better All Blacks. And I think some counties are not blessed with that as well. And that's kind of, pardon me, that's my issue with the whole, unless you mandate a certain number of training sessions, or, and that has to be led by the players and has to be agreed with the GPA and the county boards and centrally, that everybody is on a level playing pitch. Like, it always strikes me that counties that have a bunch of players in Dublin, so Donegal or Mayo, they lose so much time travelling up and down to training sessions over the course, especially in summertime when they all travel, that there must be some better way of fostering team spirit and having a work-life balance and having a better team at the end of that. I don't know what the answer to this is, but I think now would be a good time for us to start having those conversations collectively with players, with coaches and with administrators, to try and get to a point where the balance is right. Because if it's not, then the system where everybody trains 100 times per matches that they play is going to continue to exist.
Yeah, I think you're dead right, and you're right. It needs to be a level playing field. It needs to be, across the board in terms of all the teams, because you're spot on. I think there's a lot of variation between each team, and the coaching and managers are crucial. Like, they're obviously, they're the heartbeat, really. Like, the players are kind of, I suppose the coaches, the managers really start to set the culture, or set the, how they see, for example, Cork football. And then the players, rope in behind it, and they get energy from it. And then they start to take a little bit more ownership, and that's where the players drive it. And I think it's hugely important. And I think you might be right in terms of, it could be an opportunity to actually reassess and see, is there a way that we can actually get this balance right? Can we, I think there is strict guidelines around, the training you can do, and around, team holidays and going away and training camps and things like that. But maybe if there's a way to narrow it down a bit more, just to get that balance right, so everyone is on it. Like, it's very hard to, I suppose, to manage in terms of from an individual point of view, because everyone goes out and does their own thing as well, and you're trying to manage all that together as well. So I think it'd be a case of just team guidelines. But the biggest factor here for me is creating that culture early within the group, and if you can do that, like, that's really what we're trying to do with the Cork lads, is, like, off the back of our under-20s winning the All-Ireland last year. It's really important that they're coming into something that's, really solid and really set up to, achieve success going forward. So that's, one of the key motivators for us is keeping that culture really, really strong, so that we can achieve the ultimate,
When you were coming back, was it always your intention to get involved again with the Cork Senior panel, and were you confident enough in being able to pick the ball up again and go, this all feels very familiar to me?
Yeah, I was and I wasn't. I had some doubts. I was lucky enough that I chipped away with Gaelic football over in Melbourne from a kind of a more of a social point of view. We played in like a sevens tournament and a nines tournament there in the summer months, and it was always a bit of crack. There was played with Gary Owen over there. And
it must have been a bit of a ringer, in fairness. Right? That's slightly unfair that the lads who are out there and having their year out, and then Ciaran Sheehan rolls up and is like, hang on a second, what?
It was a good standard. I think Jamie Clark played in a few. We had a few Monaghan senior footballers. It was a good standard. It was a good level. I marked an old teammate there from CIT, Steve O'Donoghue from Ballincollig, who was just a neighbour club at home, and it was just funny how we felt like we ended up marking each other in Melbourne, like, might have been 8 or 9 or 10 years on. So it was great. It's a great way to come together from the Irish side of things. But yeah, that gave me a small bit of a confidence that coming back and the transition back would be reasonably okay. I knew I'd have a lot to work on, but and I'm still working on that. But yeah, look, it was a reasonably good start. Like, in terms of I played a McGrath Cup game against Kerry. It was my first game back, and it's always good to line out against Kerry, and for it to be my first game back was great.
And you hockeyed them.
Sorry.
And you hockeyed them as well to make things better.
Yeah, we did, which is always nice. But I suppose their argument is it's only the McGrath Cup and it's early days. But yeah, no, look, it was everything was going on track. Obviously the league it's disappointing, that we couldn't kind of finish out the league as such. Whether that's going to happen or not, we really don't know. For a team that was kind of moving quite well, I think it's just great to be back, and the question's still up in the air whether I can fully make the transition, but let's hope I can in good time.
I know, obviously, Cork in Division 3 is this it's a low point in Cork football history, but actually it's been a really good opportunity for that young team to bed in a bit off Broadway, for you to get your flying miles as well, and it's been a winning environment. So that's actually been kind of the perfect situation in many ways. Nobody wanted from Cork football ever to be in Division 3, but here you are making the best of a bad situation.
Yeah, I think so. I think I had that conversation there with someone over the last couple of days, and I think it is a good thing. I think we've experimented an awful lot with the squad that we've had. We've kind of brought guys in, brought guys out, and I think it's really given us the opportunity to experiment a little bit. And again, as I mentioned there before, off the under-21 lads, winning last year, I think it's it's kind of brought them in, and they're winning again. So it's important to keep that ball rolling. That you're constantly winning, because I guess you build that winning mentality, and they're getting some good exposure because it is a jump up from.
We're gone again.
And you'd hope that'll kind of put us in good stead moving forward.
One last thing that I just wanted to ask you about the return to play. We're obviously seeing and having conversations about the Bundesliga is back. It seems to be going okay. The Premier League is going to be back, I think, in about 3 weeks' time. Rugby's going to be back August 22nd, and there's some kind of loosening up around the conversation about when the GAA might reopen. What's your instinct about when it might be safe to go back onto the field? The figures are decent in many of the counties at the moment, and there is some talk about maybe underage football coming back, about club football coming back, and then it's kind of flipped again to like, well, actually we might be able to manage inter-county panels quite well because they're small and the risk would be small. What do you want to happen? What do you feel might happen?
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get caught up in, obviously everything's increased in terms of the numbers through this whole thing, and it's very easy to get caught up in saying that, let's go right back into it, let's come up with a plan now, but I think you have to be very careful around it. I think John Horan made a great point that time about the social distancing, that is it really feasible to put 15 lads or 30 lads out against each other when there's social distancing in place? I wouldn't think so. I tend to agree with John on that one, and look, I'd be hoping and trying to be as optimistic as possible that we would get some GAA this year. At the moment, my gut feel is I'm leaning towards potentially not, but again, trying to stay positive with it. But I think, as I said, it's easy when people are starting to we're going through the phases, and people are out and about a bit more, and the pressure comes on, and there's a lot of pressure for the GAA to act on it and for something to happen. I think there might be something come back and implemented, but to the level of intercounty championship, I just can't see it happening, to be honest. From the club point of view, maybe squeeze in something, but again, you're putting enormous pressure on guys to just, again, you have to think about the player welfare side of things here, because if you're trying to squeeze a season out in October to December or October to January, then does that put an awful lot of pressure on guys again straight away? And that's the question kind of we have to be asking ourselves, and I think the GAA and the GPA have to be asking ourselves. Obviously, everyone wants to get back, and there's an urgency to get back, but I think we just have to tread water a bit until the right measures are in place, and everyone feels safe to do so.
And if people were to feel safe, say, because like by that stage you would hope that there's been a couple of months of rugby, which obviously again they've had an analysis which suggests the scrums are kind of the pinch point in terms of the proper contact, and as the World Health Organization would define it. So would that give comfort, I think, or do you think to GAA players that actually other sports have managed a way to do this, or because they're professional, is that the big gap really?
I think the professional thing's the big gap here. I suppose there's an awful lot of things to consider when it comes to the likes of insurances, the likes of all these different things that again it comes the responsibility of coaches within clubs. Like the GAA community is so wide that it's very hard to manage all the different people and the different things that clubs are going to do, because there's so much variation. But I think ultimately the big difference there is the professional versus the amateur, and how you kind of control all of that. But again, look, as you said, it's changing from week to week and month to month, and you just don't know. Who knows? There could be a vaccine in a couple of months. You just don't know. So being patient with it and giving it a chance. But of course, we're all really eager to get back playing. But this is, I suppose, in many ways, it's life or death. So we just have to be really careful around, how we manage it and how we deal with it. Which I'm sure the GAA are doing, and they have the advisory board in place and everything. So they'll just listen to the experts and act on that.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. It is literally life and death, and it's hard to sometimes remember that when you see everybody out, and the beaches are going to be very busy this weekend, and everybody's going to be out having ice creams as if this never happened. And actually, it did happen, and we need to be careful to make sure it doesn't happen again. Ciaran, I think the whole country, apart from Kerry, we're delighted that you're going to be back lighting up our fields sooner rather than later. So welcome back. Congratulations on bedding back in, and really looking forward to seeing you playing a bit of ball soon.
Thanks very much, lads. I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Great to have you with us. So a reminder, of course, that Cork GAA's fundraising run on Saturday through their GoFundMe page. You can find on Cork Club Together for Pieta on social media channels like their Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. And if you need help from Pieta House, you can text 51444. Just text the word help to 51444, or you can call 1800 247 247. Now, delighted to say that yesterday afternoon we caught up with Irish singer Gavin James for the very latest episode of the OTB Culture Hall of Fame with Now TV. Good timing too, because Gavin has just announced that he's going to be performing 4 drive-in gigs in Ireland this summer.